So now we're going to go ahead. While we're trying to fill a little bit of time here, we only planned on broadcasting one match during round one because we wanted to kind of see if we could make sure we got everything up and running okay, which we more or less did. I'll give us a little bit of slack there. We're going to talk about what decks we would have played if we were actually registered for this event ourselves. So we're going to bring up my deck list, and we're going to do this throughout the day with our other guests also. So this is what I would have played in the event. It's kind of a combination of the Bant Snow deck I played at the Star City Players Championship back in December, and the Legends build of Miracles that I played for the better part of a decade. So basically, you can see the normal Snow package with Astrolabes and some Ice and Quaddles, some Planeswalkers, and then also I squeezed in, I don't see where they are on the chart there because they're different artworks, two Ventures, a Vanillion Click, and an Uro. And I was excited about the possibility of Uro with Caracas, and I played a league with my deck a couple days ago, and it does work. I actually, against Rogue Delver, on turn 4, 5, and 6, I just went front half of Uro, and then Caracas it back to my hand before the sacrifice trigger. Mm-hmm. So you get 3 life, you get a card, you get a land drop, and it really allows you some time to pull ahead. And I was pretty happy with that interaction. We have a mix of defensive cards, and then kind of some just sideboard stuff to defend against a whole suite of options. This deck doesn't win very quickly. We don't have the Entreat the Angels hammer that we had in the past, but I was pretty happy with it. I came a game away from winning the league I played in. I actually lost to a new build of maybe not brand new, but a build of Doomsday with Thassa's Oracle and Cavern of Souls in their Doomsday pile, which it turns out I don't have much of an answer to, and was soundly defeated by in Game 3. It was an entertaining match. I actually won Game 2 where the Doomsday player decked themselves, then led off the turn with Veil of Summer to protect their coming Thassa's Oracle. And the Veil of Summer, I responded to it with a blue card, and so the player had to draw a card, which they weren't planning on, and then decked themselves and died.
That's awesome.
And I was pretty happy about it. But then Game 3, I was all set up with my defenses with, Pyroblast and such things. And the Doomsday went off, a couple turns went by, and then they used kind of the new, it's a colorfully built deck with non-blue card drawing. They cycled Edge of Autumn, they cycled a Street Wraith, and then they went Cavern, Thassa's Oracle with no cards, and I couldn't do anything about it. So there's definitely some holes in this list that need to be, maybe updated with further rigorous work for the new metagame. But I was pretty happy with it as a first attempt, and it was fun. Do we have Tannon's deck? Is that...
Okay. Do you mind if I say a thing or two about yours
No,
real quick?
Go ahead. Yeah, please, go ahead.
I was about to say, Joe and Vincer Shaper Savant, name a more iconic duo. I don't know if you can, but looking at this list, I remember if I saw a picture of it or something in the chat that we were having about all this, and just looking at it, seeing Vincer Shaper Savant, Vanillion Click, Caracas, and the main deck Pyroblast, I would have known that this was your deck before any other Magic player in existence, just looking at it, and then seeing the moat and the sideboard would have 100% confirmed things for me. I was like, yep, this is Joe's list.
Yeah, moat is a card that I've gotten a lot of
mileage out of
over the years.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed that one.
It'd be like seeing a Delver deck with Thought Scour in it. You'd be like, is this a Tainted Grace deck,
Sure.
kind of thing. But
okay, so why are there only 3 Force of Wills in my deck? Well, Force of Will, as we know, is you're willing to be down a card in order to have a free interaction spell, and that's great, and they're important. But I've always felt like if you have enough one-man interaction, then you can kind of get away with that. So as you can see, we have a Spell Pierce, a Spell Snare, a Pyroblast with a Veil of Summer, and that's kind of always been what I'm trying to do, is get away with not playing the full set. And there's a lot of people now playing the full set plus a couple Force Negations on the side. But a difference between myself and a lot of Control players in Legacy over the years is that I've never been particularly enamored with actual cards in hand card advantage spells. So I don't generally tend to accumulate lots of cards in my hand. So the tax on Force of Will is more significant than it would be if you were playing like Accumulated Knowledge or something like that. So I have less cards accumulated in hand. I'm trying to get away with playing fewer of them. And I think we can agree that if you can get away with playing fewer, then that's a good way to go. Whether you can actually afford it or not is sometimes in question, even for me. But that is the reason, that's the thought process, and that's how I ended up where I did.
It makes sense to me, right? Like it's card disadvantage, like you said. there's not a lot of matchups where you have to have one on turn 1 or 2 out of your deck, to function in the matchup. Plus, you're not capitalizing on like the tempo advantage and like the advantage garnered from having a free interaction spell in Force of Will. The reason that you see, you're seeing upwards of 6 copies in the Delver decks is generally it's backed up by some form of pressure and the game ends a lot quicker. So, if a Delver deck dies with extra spells in their hand, you probably messed up somewhere, or you just got, turn 1 or turn 2. So
sure,
definitely agree with that. All right, I was going to say, I think we're going to move on to what I would have played today. And for anyone at home that knows me or just listen to this broadcast, I don't think you're going to be surprised, right? I mean, would you have been surprised if I came up with something different, Joe?
No, I would not. I would have fully expected the card Delver of Secrets to be in your list, and some Wastelands, probably somewhat similar to what we saw in round 1.
Yeah, I mean, almost the exact same list. I kind of just like cut and copied from, a metagame report, one of the tournament winning deck lists. Me personally, what I usually do is I take these lists, I mess around with them a little bit. I usually change like a card or two depending on what I like or don't like, some stuff in here. But this is the gist of what I would be doing. I'm a big Spell Pierce fan, so I'd probably find a way to play the third Spell Pierce in this deck, especially with cards like Oko, Thief of Crowns, and every single deck list that can cast it. Nowadays, I like to interact with cards like that just a little bit more. I am a big fan of the free permission spells in here, and Force of Will, Force of Negation, and Daze. So you're seeing upward, 10 free spells out of my deck pre-board. That's super important in this deck, right? Like I need to be able to play a Delver on 1 or a Termagoyf or Arcanist on 2 and not feel bad about tapping out and still being able to interact, right? That kind of stuff. Because I think, you've seen these decks. I ever have to play like a turn off or have to leave up a mana to leave up Spell Pierce or leave up a mana to leave up Lightning Bolt, and I'm not being efficient with my mana, I'm generally going to lose. The Delver player is going to fall behind because our cards aren't as powerful as all the other decks. And like when you look at these cards individually, they're not as powerful as what's going on in some of these other decks, right? But you're in a sweet spot in the metagame where you have this super fast clock, this really good permission, and if Wasteland is relevant, then your deck is really good. So I would also probably think about having some crazy sideboard plan for the matchups where I want to board out Wasteland. Yeah, you did hear that correctly. In a lot of the matchups, I board out Wastelands. This card is a spell in your deck. It's not just a land. And yeah, it does actually cast some of your stuff. So it's a little weird to have a 3-drop in your deck and maybe board out lands. But in the matchups where you're doing that, they go really long. Like you're playing, 9 and 10 turns. You're going to make land drops. You're going to be cycling through your deck so much that you're going to find that kind of stuff. And if you can't cast Oko, that means every other card in your hand is a spell, and that you could probably cast all of those, and you're probably doing fine.
And I love that you have there's more free cards in the sideboard, too. There's Surgical Extraction. Okay, that's pretty common. Then we have Submerge also, which is a card that I absolutely adore.
Yeah.
And it's
big
just,
fan.
Yeah, it's just one of, and it's just, free interaction against a green deck, which is super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. You always have the dream scenario where they crack a fetch and you get to submerge a Termagoyf. Like that's the classic play, right? That's the 2011 legacy staple play, right? Just the biggest blowout. There's also a big throwback here in the sideboard to a Rough and Tumble. A card that is pretty cool. It's a Pyroclasm effect that doesn't kill any creature in your deck as long as your Delver of Secrets is flipped. And there are some decks in the format that's very good against. I'm thinking of decks like, Death and Taxes, Elves, the new Esper Vial deck that's picking up in popularity. And if you can catch an opponent at the right time with this card, it's very, very good, right? It does that kind of thing. You're never casting Tumble. Let's be real. That's never happened in the history of Legacy. And another card in here, it's a pet card of mine, but becoming way more ubiquitous over the last year or two, is Sylvan Library. I'm just a huge fan of this card. I can't tell you how many times I've untapped a Sylvan Library and just immediately said pay 8. Like without even looking at the cards, but like pay 8. Like just get deeper in the deck. Let's draw these cards. I have the Clothes as the sideboard because everybody else is trying it out, and I would want to give it a try. It kind of reminds me of stuff like Oko, right? Like it's a big, huge, powerful threat. We're probably never attacking with it, but the effect out of it is really good. It kind of has this like Deathrite Shaman-esque feel to it,
sure.
With permanent, and that we don't have to put mana into. So pretty cool stuff there. And then I'm a big fan of cards like a Braid in this format. I remember when this card got printed, I got super excited because it's just another card that's really flexible and good in the format, because it's a spell that, while it does keep flipping your Delver of Secrets, it's an instant or sorcery, it does double duty. And this is why you see cards like a Braid, making in these decks. They're not as efficient as 1 mana cards, right? Like it's not as good as another Chain Lightning at killing a creature, right? You're paying 2 mana instead of 1. It's not as good as Lightning Bolt. There's also 1 mana ways to deal with artifacts that are really good in the format, but what you're doing is you're getting 2 cards in 1 to free up more sideboard slots for other things.
Yeah.
I'm also a big fan of Winter Orb in a lot of the matchups. Any matchup where Wasteland is relevant or your opponent is going to out mana you generally. If you get to land Winter Orb at the right time, you can pull very far ahead in the next few turns. It also plays really well with Daze and kind of, picking up your lands and playing them untapped and stuff too. So
yeah.
Big fan of this deck. It's just the way I like to play Magic and Legacy. I'm not saying I wouldn't play other things, but this is what I would play in a money setting. You know what I'm talking about? Like a big, high tournament.
Something you cared about, yeah.
Yeah. Any other time that I play, like when I play locally in fun tournaments, whatever, I play decks more kind of like what you posted first.
Wait. So my deck that I have put years into, maybe not particularly this version, but my Venture package, that's a fun deck.
Yeah.
But I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to clarify.
Fun can be good. I didn't say fun's not bad, Joe. Fun can be good. But no, the what I like to refer to those decks is like blue soup. I think is like the nickname that a lot of Legacy players kind of give the decks, where it's just like it's the Force of Will control deck with a bunch of other colors, right? And I'll tell you this. If you know me, if you've read my social media, if you listen to my podcast, anything like that where I talk about Magic, I hate Astrolabe like quite a bit. I'm not a big fan of the card. I don't like what it's done to the format. I don't like how it homogenizes decks. Like when a 4 or 5 color deck is casting Blood Moon or Back to Basics against you, like that's an actual problem in design somewhere. Like that's not okay, kind of thing. But I am also a huge hypocrite, and I will play the decks when it's really good and powerful. And I have played them in a lot of tournaments recently. I've been trying to. The problem is I never have Astrolabe in my opening hand, Joe. My opponents always do. I never cast it on one. The deck's so good when it casts it on one.
I just, I'm used to having a 1-mana artifact in my opening hand, and then that got banned, so we replaced it with another one. So we're kind of filling time here as we build towards round 2. If we want to break the fourth wall a bit, and production wants to let me know what we're looking at here as far as time-wise, that'd be great.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so we had... Okay, so we have 2 matches still playing, one of which had to be... It sounds like the match had to be restarted. I don't have any more information than that. But
it's game 3. Okay,
anyway, so there's 2 matches still playing. While those are finishing up, Tannon, you've been kind of for the last, really since it came out, maybe 6 or 8 months ago now, you've really been at the forefront of kind of analysis of Pioneer. Mm-hmm. You have a podcast where you talk. It's every week, correct?
Yes, sir.
About updates and what's going on in the world of Pioneer. Now, my understanding, as I haven't played much of it in the last, let's say 2 months, is that Pioneer is struggling a little bit on Magic Online, as of, and is that something that you feel like is like, are people moving into Historic, which is kind of the Magic Arena version of Pioneer, or is there a problem with the Magic, or is just do you have any ideas on what might be going on there?
I have a simple answer for everything, and the answer is just yes. But I will go longer to this. Right. It's kind of funny you say you haven't played a lot of Pioneer in the last month or 2. No one has. The events haven't been firing on Magic Online. You can't really play paper Magic right now, which I think was kind of a big nail on the coffin for Pioneer. Here's the thing. I actually think Pioneer, I said it on the podcast many times, I've said it out loud in any way, shape, or form, is I think Pioneer was in a unique spot when it first came out, especially the first couple months, where I thought it was going to become the most popular format in Magic. Not the best format, whatever you want to do. I thought it was going to be the most popular format, right? You can say what you will about certain things, but I think banning fetch lands was an amazing step in Magic, having a format where that's not a thing you could be doing, because fetch lands are a problem in Magic. Like, when you look at a lot of the problems that happen in a lot of formats, you can boil it down to fetch lands being legal. When it comes to the format at large, I think the format has the potential to be great. The problem right now is there's only about 3 real playable decks, and they're all combo decks, right? And so people aren't super happy about that. Like, there's a Splinter Twin type thing going on in the format, and it is just the best deck overall. Mm-hmm. And so people don't like losing to that, just losing out of nowhere to that kind of stuff. And here's the biggest problem that happened. I think Historic is the biggest gain, got the biggest gain from COVID-19, right? From the pandemic that's going on. And Pioneer got the biggest loss in the fact that what Pioneer was going to become, it was going to be Pro Tour, a Players Tour format. It was going to start having Grand Prix. You're already seeing side events. The Star City Games Invitational had moved to Pioneer. NRG was, planning to do a lot of Pioneer stuff. It was going to be very popular. all of that had to go away because there's no paper Magic. And so the only way to play really high level Magic from the Wizards' perspective is on Arena right now. They've kind of said, like, we're not doing anything on Magic Online. We're only doing Arena now. Well, there's only one format on Arena, right? There's Standard. And they kind of had this format in their back pocket called Historic. And if you follow NRG, you've probably, been a fan of or seen a lot of Jeff Hoogelin, right? Used to be involved in stuff quite a bit. And he's been a big proponent for Historic. But for the longest time, it was kind of like a meme or a joke where, like, hey, WotC, Historic content, Historic, you backing it up when? Like, when's that going to happen? And they didn't really think. And so when COVID-19 happened, when this pandemic happened, and they're like, well, we need another format. We need stuff to do. Historic was just sitting there, and they're like, hey guys, put me in, coach. I'm ready to go. And so when you look at Historic as a whole, I think the format's cool. Like, right, I haven't played a ton of it on Arena. I do have a fully stocked Arena account, and I'm going to get into it a little bit more. I have a full-time job. I have a family, so I don't get to play as much Magic as I want to. And the format looks good. You can tell it wasn't really designed to be this high-level tournament format, and they're getting there, right? Like, they're doing a lot of banning, a lot of suspending cards, which I think is really cool, by the way, having a suspension list, not just a ban list. And you have this new set that I think it's out officially.
Jumpstart.
Jumpstart.
I think it came out on Arena
this week. It's hard to get the cards, though. You have to play the event or something. You can't buy packs, which blows my mind. But anyway, we're not going to get into that. I could talk for hours about that stuff. But you could tell that, with them changing, they had to change cards in the format, right? Like, they're like, these cards are in the packs, but they're not in Arena. Because I think when they designed the set, because, they usually design sets, like a year in advance, year and a half in advance. They didn't know that this was going to be a Players Tour format. They didn't know that this was going to be happening, right? And so they're kind of having to scramble and fix everything. So what you're seeing is all the attention is getting pushed onto Historic, right? And rightfully so. It makes sense. This is a good decision from them. They're doing. And I may sound like I'm kind of crapping on WotC right now, and I'm not. I'm actually saying I think they're doing a good job overall with what they've been giving, with what they're having to deal with, because we're in an unprecedented times, and there's not a lot that you can do here. And I think they're doing a good job with it.
Yeah, I've certainly been a proponent of, since we're stuck online right now, and I think high-level formats can't be just, events can't be just one format. You can't have just Standard all the time for everything. You have to do something else. And because of the card pool on Arena, Historic is what there is. And so you have to run with it.
Yeah, and so with the rise of Historic, its popularity is getting really big because, again, the format looks great. It looks fun. I'm super excited to try it because there's a lot of cards in there I'm a big fan of, so I'm ready to play with them. With that going on and all of the attention going there, something's going to have to get left out, right? Like, you can't pay 100% attention to everything at all times. Yeah. And so that's been Pioneer. I'm hoping that it can stand the test of time, and that, because, let's be real, we're not playing paper Magic until sometime late in 2021, if that's happening.
I don't anticipate it being anytime soon, that's for sure.
I'm thinking 2022, especially if we just keep not wearing a mask. Wear your mask, people. But but seriously, it's going to be a while. So unless there was a big step going, they made the new organized play announcement last week, which I tried to read some of it. I'd have to read it 3 or 4 times before I fully understand it. It doesn't affect me that much anymore, so I'm not, super into reading it and trying to understand it. But they're bringing back super PTQs and stuff like that online, which is a big deal, because if you have those of Pioneer, the format will get played more and get fired. The thing is it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and one of those one of those circles that kind of just killed itself, where so the format's not great, right? It's not in the best spot it's ever been in. And they were aggressively banning stuff for a while, which made the format better and better. But the problem is since the format's not great, people are not playing. And since people are not playing, they're not getting enough information to change things. And then when they're not getting enough information to change things, they're not going to make a change because they're paying attention to Historic and not to Pioneer. Yeah. Right. So it's kind of in a situation where everything that could be going against it is going against it. Right. Yeah. It's literally being set up to fail.
Yeah. So if some of these things kind of change course, then maybe it can, it can come back. Maybe it's maybe it doesn't have to be just a death knell for the format. Like you're saying, you think if they change up the ban list a little bit, if people have more time, if other formats shift over, if Magic Online has more incentives to play versus Arena, then maybe it comes back a little bit.
Exactly. So, I was going to say the ban list that happened last Monday, right? We saw 9 cards get banned across different formats, and then Pioneer got, they said 4 different formats we're going to be on the list, right? We get the announcement of the announcement of the announcement. And then Monday comes around and we get the 4 formats, and there's bans in 3 other formats, and then Pioneer gets an unban. While I do agree with unbanning the card, I even talked about it on my show the week before. I was like, I think this is a card we start talking about. Like, hey, maybe this can come off the ban list, blah, blah, blah. But there was nothing banned. And almost every single reaction across everyone, social media, everyone, I just laughed out loud when I read it, man. I was like, come on. This is a joke. This is almost like a slap in the face. Like, people want and need this.
Right.
And they cite, it's funny, they give you the little like throwaway paragraph, right? Like for the other formats, they give you a full page with explanations. And for Pioneer, they give you one thing and they're like, well, our data shows that this isn't needed. Things are fine. The metagame is evolving. But I'm like, what data? Your events aren't firing. People aren't playing the format. That's the data you need.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
If consumers aren't consuming your product, change the product.
Okay, so it sounds like, thank you for sticking with us through all of that. It sounds like round 2 is getting ready to go. More information is forthcoming to us as we're sitting here. So we're going to be looking at, so we're now going to look at deck lists for our first round 2 feature match. I believe we're going to have 2 matches this round, depending on how long the first match plays out. But we're going to go ahead and look at our deck list here. We have Andrew Waltice, who is a regular on the NRG series.
Wow. And, sorry to interrupt you.
We're going to be playing, I forgive you, that your outburst was completely reasonable based on what we're seeing, which is Blue-Black Ninjas. And yeah, go ahead. If you have, you're eagerly awaiting to burst out your comments, go ahead.
Eagerly awaiting to see this play out, I think is a better way to say it. So this is a cool deck, right? I remember when this deck first kind of came out of this, is with the printing of Yuriko? I have no idea how to pronounce this word. I've never heard anyone else say it. The Tiger Shadow, the commander-specific card, right? But they're legal in Legacy, right? The supplemental sets are legal in Legacy. I bought a set of these when they first came out, just because it's an EDH card. I know it's going to be expensive. I made sure to get mine. You can go to the NRG website and get yours today. The card is really cool, really fun. I do like playing with it in Commander. I will say this. I have sleeved this deck up and never actually played with it. A good friend of mine, I think you played against him on camera, Jonathan Job, played this at an actual event. So I'm gonna defer to you in a moment so you can talk about it and whatever. This is a different build than the original builds that came out. You're seeing some really cool innovation here with the Retrofitter Foundries, Ornithopter. Changeling Outcast is not a card I thought I would be talking about at a Legacy event here, but it makes sense, right? It's a ninja, but it's also a cheap creature that can't be blocked. So it's kind of actually the ideal 1-drop in this format because, it's still going to trigger your bigger ninja cards, but also be able to attack to get through ninjutsu. Ninjutsu is an ability that was originally printed before a lot of you were born or played Magic way back in the day, where you can take an unblocked creature, pay a cost on a creature card that has ninjutsu, and put it in play of that creature, returning the other one to your hand. So it's kind of like your creature sneaks through, kind of like a ninja, gets in, strikes your opponent, and then when ninjas hit your opponent, all of them have a cool, like you're seeing here with the Infiltrator here. Whenever it deals damage to to a player, you draw a card. But this actually says whenever a ninja does. So if the Outcast itself deals damage to your opponent, then you're drawing a card there. Also, ninjutsu is generally a cheaper way to get your creatures into play. So really cool stuff here. Also, it's kind of nice that all of them, or most of them, are blue as well. So they fit into the Force of Will package that needs to happen. So this is going to play out kind of like a Delver deck in this format. Now, Joe, you've played against this deck. I know you didn't have super great things to say about it back then, but I mean, come on, this has got to be cool.
No, it is cool. And I did, the match you were referencing against Jonathan Job, it was on camera, and it was a match where neither one of us really understood the opponent's decks particularly well. I had never seen the card Yuriko at that point. And you're right, it is. So we have 2 sets of ninjas that draw cards, and they're not counterable when they come into play. Changeling Outcast, so when ninjas kind of existed in the limited format, I actually thought to myself, can I play this in Legacy with the Yuriko and the Infiltrator and maybe Fallen Shinobi? And Changeling Outcast isn't an ideal 1-drop, except I wasn't sure if it was good enough since it isn't blue.
Right.
And apparently some people argue that it is. And Retrofitter Foundry is a card that is kind of unassuming. I read this card multiple times in deck lists in kind of the 6 months ago shell of that is developed into what we're seeing here. And Retrofitter Foundry is a card I read, and I was like, this really doesn't seem very impressive. It doesn't do very much.
Same.
That's not true. It's pretty good. it's kind of annoying. It comes down early. It's not easy to deal with, especially in game one, because a lot of decks can't deal with artifacts in game one. And it does work. It spits out tokens. It upgrades the creatures you have into 4/4s. It's fairly. This deck is, if you this is a deck where you can come into the match, you might have to read 3 or 4 cards on it.
Oh yeah.
But it puts together a package that's really pretty good.
And let's take a look at what the Ninja deck's going to be playing against this round. Yet another. Okay, I don't want to say these are brews. These are definitely decks that have been around a while. But this is a deck that I kind of alluded to before the show, and I want to talk about a little bit. This is a lot of people call this the Karn Echo deck.
Sure.
I was going to say this. It is kind of. It feels like the next evolution of Bomberman. The mono white version of this that we saw. And have you seen this deck around yet?
I have. I saw it. I've seen it, and it's a deck that I was kind of worried about playing against with my various blue venture packages because Narset, that's pretty annoying. This deck is fast. It does some scary stuff. And this is a deck there before, in preparation for this event today, I went through all the most recent Magic Online updates, and this is one of the decks that was on there. Maybe not this exact list, but this blue Prisonish, Narset, Echo the Eons, Karn, Broken Modern blue cards deck. And this is a deck that is scary. It can do some mean things. It can make you Echo the Eons and Narset if you haven't put that together yet in your head. Narset's in play. You as the opponent can't draw extra cards. Echo the Eons is basically a time twister, and then so you can't draw extra cards. So one person sitting there with 7 cards, other person with 0. Not exactly fair. Probably game winning. And then go ahead.
I was gonna say absolutely, and this is gonna play a lot like the Bomberman deck in the fact that you're seeing a lot of what we call the soul lands in Legacy. With Ancient Tomb, City of Traders, you have Lotus Petals, Mox Opals, a lot of ways to get 2 to 3 to 4 mana over the next first 2 turns. And what is my favorite card, sarcasm, in all of Magic, Chalice of the Void. And even in this matchup, I think a Chalice of the Void, just like as if, I was a Delver player, Chalice of the Void on 1 is generally enough to win the game if it goes unanswered, if it goes unforced on turn 1 or undazed on turn 1. And you're going to be seeing something like that. I think Emery goes real well in this deck. This is a 1 mana play in this deck always. Like, if you have to spend more than 1 mana on this card, your hand probably did not come together correctly. And then just even the small stuff of Mishra's Bauble or Urza's Bauble along with Emery every turn is an engine that can keep this deck going for free and drawing extra cards every turn. Karn the Great Creator really flexing his muscles here because just look at him in the picture, man. He's showing off the guns and really, really shows off how powerful this deck is. In fact, can we bring up the sideboard here before game 1 because it's actually super important in this deck. This deck is a toolbox deck. There we go. So we had it up a little earlier. You're seeing Defense Grid, Tomaat's Crypt, another LED in the sideboard, Engineered Explosive. He's even got the Lattice package. That is yet another banned card in Modern. Ensnaring Bridge, Walking Ballista, all these cards. So this sideboard is about 11 cards that are actually playable game 1. These 4 Force of Wills come in the combo matchups, obviously, or whatever, but all these other cards are playable game 1 and are going to happen very fast because Karn is generally going to get played on turn 2 in this deck with the good draws.
Yeah. No.
Okay, okay. I'm really
is
disappointed.
This is unfortunate. Maybe we'll be able to come back to it, but sadly for a lot of you at home, and certainly for Tannon and I, as you're probably all excited about this matchup, there was some issue or other, and so instead we're going to have to switch matchups. Maybe the players had trouble setting up I'm not even speculate what happened there. Anyway, we're going to have to watch a different matchup. So we're going to see John Ryan Hamilton playing Goblins. We'll probably only spend a brief amount of time covering this. Goblins, a card advantage, aggro, powerhouse that's not as fast as you would think, but does take advantage of a couple new cards. Muxus, Goblin Grandee from Jumpstart. And probably, let's see, do we have Conspicuous Snoop? I didn't have a chance to see it, but
Looks like no Snoop. But Muxus was my pick as like one of the sleepers for the entire set, by the way. That card reads very powerfully.
Yeah, it does. So yeah, definitely the 2 eye-opening cards from Jumpstart for Constructed were Muxus and the Allosaurus Shepherd for green. So we see here we're into the match now. Sorry about the little hiccup there. These players had already started because they weren't planning on being on camera. so we didn't have the match held. But here we are into game 1, Goblins with some War Marshal tokens, a Wasteland on the board versus Dreadhorde Arcanist, so looks like Rug Delver on the other side of the board.
Yeah, and it looks like a pretty good opener from the Rug Delver side. There's multiple red spells in the graveyard. That's a Lightning Bolt and a Chain Lightning, and there's an Arcanist that's been unanswered so far in play. Mm-hmm. And this is the dream opener for Delver in this matchup, because I'll tell you this, as a Delver player, this is not a matchup that you want. Goblins is actually pretty dang good against the Delver player because they're good at extending the game. They're good at slugging through all this removal, and 1 or 2 Lightning Bolts generally doesn't get the job done. Arcanist can go a long way in flashing them back, but what you see here, there's a Munitions Expert in the hand of the Goblins player. That's something that can go and possibly take care of his Arcanist in a turn or two, depending on how they want to play this turnout. It looks like we got a tank going on from one of the players here trying to figure out how to play their turn. I think we're on the Goblins main phase here.
Yeah, it looks like we are. XJ Cloud's turn, and we're on the Goblin side. So I'm sure we want to kill this this Arcanist here. We have the Munitions Expert. The problem is that if we put in the Expert to bolt the Dreadhorde Arcanist, and then one of our Goblins is killed in response, then it's not going to work. And so it looks like this is clever. We're giving up some card advantage here, but we are going to force our opponent to fetch, and then we're going to respond to fetch in order to do this without red mana being available, which is clever. It is a cost. We're paying a real cost for this, but we are going to get the Arcanist off the board.
Exactly. I was about to say, this is a big brain play from the Goblin player. Really cute play, right? I have wastelanded many a fetch land in my day in this format, and I think I've actually done it against you before, where I've wastelanded a fetch land that's been in play before, and it's not a play that comes up all the time, and it may look weird to people at home, but this is actually denies red mana, so this makes sure that while Munitions Experts couldn't be countered here because of Cavern of Souls, it makes sure there's no red mana in play possibly to get blown out here, because if you were to put Munitions Expert into play and the Delver player did have another bolt, it's a nightmare scenario, because now you used up your only removal spell for the Arcanist. The Arcanist is still around, and there's more fuel in the graveyard for the Arcanist to just keep chipping away at your creatures. So really heads up, cute, very smart play from the Goblins player here. I got to say, this is probably an experienced Goblin player, with some experience. Because playing with Goblins, it's a labor of love. Like, there's not many people that pick up Legacy and want to be like, yeah, I want to start playing Legacy. And they're like, I want to play Goblins. No, you want to play Brainstorm, right? Like, you want to play the big, powerful stuff. Right, you don't want to play the little weird-looking red and black creatures,
Mm-hmm. It's funny you say that, and also, either an experienced Goblins player or maybe just an experienced Legacy player.
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
because the Wasteland Fetch thing that you're talking about in Rug Delver generally is going to happen when you're sitting on a daze, but the idea is the same, that you want to temporarily deny the mana, even though you're giving up a card in the long run to accomplish whatever you're trying to do. In this case, get the Arcanist off the board. And we see Hooting Mandrills come down, which is bigger than probably any individual creature in the Goblins deck, but Goblins doesn't usually play, one-on-one. They bring in the whole army.
They bring everybody.
You see here. So losing the mana, losing that one, the Wasteland for no purpose, also costs us here because we actually could use more total mana. We don't have black at the moment, although we do from the Cavern. So as long as the Wasteland doesn't hit that, I guess we're online. And with things being uncounterable, this is we've already seen a couple of removal spells played from the Rug Delver side. This could get a little hairy.
Yeah, and this was a really good play the last couple turns, trying to think about what happened in the few turns that we missed early from the Goblins player where, they try to get lackeys through early, right? And, well, I say this now, and there's another Lightning Bolt from the Rug Delver player. Very good draw in this matchup from the Rug Delver player. Lots of interaction in this matchup because stuff like Force of Will and Daze are really bad right now, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to have Cavern of Souls. You're going to have Aether Vial. It's a cards that get boarded out generally in this matchup, or you shave on them quite a bit. And those cards being made relevant is pretty big if you can make that happen. But you see the Goblin player, taking their time. They got the lackeys in play. If that hits, that's great. It's huge, but he's protecting his important Goblins. You're looking at Palak Moons. You're looking at Sling. I'm going to say Siege Gang. Sling Gang Lieutenant. There's so many of the very similar names that these are super important to get in play. Because like you said, it's not about going tall in this deck. You're not playing a Hooting Mandrills. You're not playing a Termagoyf. You're making a bunch of 1/1s, right? But when they're all together, the sum of their parts is way greater than, 1/4/4 Trampler. for something that's going on.
I mean, we see, Sling Gang Lieutenant and Pashalik Mons, both cards from Modern Horizons that, Goblins was an archetype in Modern Horizons Limited. Mm-hmm. Sling Gang Lieutenant being one of the top uncommons in the set. And this
never passed that card in my life.
This is going to create all kinds of, actually, Munitions Expert also from Modern Horizons, I believe. And this is going to really create some difficulty here. We see Sling Gang come out first, again, being uncounterable. Rug Delver player with 5 lands in play, which, so we can hardcast the Force of Will, which is kind of, I'm sure what everyone's reaction is when a Delver deck has 5 land in play. It's not going to make any difference here because of this Cavern. And then with Pashalik Mons, the combo of Sling Gang and Pashalik Mons, that's a lot of direct damage available. Mm-hmm. Most of it going to the face, but either way, that's where you want it to go.
And you're seeing quite the draw here from both players, right? Like the Delver player, tons of interaction, lots of lightning bolts and effects like that. But also, we're seeing 6 lands in play. This is never something that you want to happen.
Yeah.
At some point in time, you're probably supposed to keep maybe 1 or 2 of these in your hand. It's probably not going to matter, but you want to be able to make your future brainstorms if you top deck those better. It's one of the reasons you don't crack your fetch, but it looks like the Goblin player has overwhelmed the Rug Delver player here, and we're going to be going into what I think is game 2. I actually like the Goblin deck quite a bit. As much as it does kill me. It's really funny. When I was playing a lot of Legacy, it was more towards the Grixis Delver days where you had like Young Pyromancer was a big card in the format, and that was really important. And Goblin Chainwhirler ate my lunch quite a bit. Because here's the thing. We saw in that game the way the Goblins wins, right? Like they go wide. They make a whole bunch of 1/1s with some abilities. They attack you and swarm you. They start sacrificing them for profit. When you're playing against Young Pyromancer and your opponent is cantripping every turn and casting Lightning Bolt and making all those 1/1s, that actually stops you quite a bit. That card is very good in this matchup, but Goblin Chainwhirler is there to kind of pick that stuff up. You have Gem Palm Incinerators, you have experts to kind of clear the way. I actually think this is a pretty good matchup for Goblins.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the Rug Delver. I don't think we got a very extensive look at that previously. Max Kaminowski, or something to that effect.
I think that sounds right. It sounds good to me.
Yeah. So we see Klothys make it into the main deck of this deck list, which was separated both from the one we saw earlier today and from yours. Mm-hmm. Anything else stand out to you? You're going to notice it quicker than I am because you're more familiar with the deck, but that is the standout choice, I think, is Klothys being in the main deck.
Yeah, it's the standout choice. 1 Hooting Mandrills instead of 2. This card's pretty big in this matchup. Having a Trampler is pretty big. Some important stuff coming on the sideboard. Braids, Rough and Tumble, the card that I mentioned earlier, just ways to do stuff like that. So we'll see if those cards are going to be able to kind of make this stuff a little bit better. This is definitely got to be a mulligan from the Goblin side. You love seeing turn 1 Aether Vial. You don't like seeing the second one, and you don't like seeing all these lands, and that Matron's not coming down for quite a while.
No, and the Caracas is not a useful land in the matchup. Yeah, this is... Goblins is not a fast deck, but that doesn't mean you want to have a slow hand, and this is going second. Even going first, this might not be good enough, but going second, I don't expect we'll see it being a keep here.
I gotta ask, is the Caracas relevant in this matchup?
I don't believe... There are legends in the Goblin deck. Muxus is...
Yeah, he's going to bounce you around. Okay.
But... That's a card where if you're going to board a land out, this would be a time that conceivably you might want to do it. Oh, I take it back. Klothys is a legend, so you could bounce that back.
Okay.
I'm not
good
sure.
Enough for me.
I'm not sure it's good enough for me. That's okay. Okay, there's another legend. All right. Pashalik Mons being a legend also. Okay, maybe
bouncing your own stuff is relevant.
Yeah.
You should definitely be fighting for this card to be in the deck a little more often. Of how many times you've played Caracas way more than me, and I think on average you bounce your own creature more often than your opponents. So,
yeah, no, dude, I love Caracas. I'm a huge fan of the card. I try and squeeze 2 of them in all my legend decks. So we're seeing here. Okay, we see a Pyrokinesis drawn as a sideboard card. We did keep this hand that we were uncertain about. I think, to say the least, but
maybe a little bit of an ambitious keep, but it might work out. If like they've drawn multiple spells over the first couple turns, if that keeps happening, Matron is really powerful, and it's going to probably resolve in this matchup. This is an aggressive play. Pyrokinesis
is the red version of Force of Will from Alliances. It's the pitch card. You see the different artworks here, but or we have popped up display. You can exile a red card from your hand to cast it, same as Force of Will. You don't not pay the 1 life penalty, and it does 4 damage, split however you want among creatures only. So we take down the Arcanist here. As opposed to Tannon, I actually think this is reasonable.
No, I think it's good. I wouldn't say it's bad.
Oh,
it's just very aggressive. But, I mean, you've got to stop Arcanist from accruing value, especially with the hand that you have.
Yeah. So we have this Matron, which will, I imagine, not be cast unless a Cavern randomly comes off the top. We're going to wait for the Vials to get up to 3 because it being our only card of relevance, we can't afford to have it countered.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, this Matron's probably going to do a lot of work. I have to believe that they have an idea of what they're going to get out of their deck already. But it's I would say, were there ringleaders in this list? I didn't get to see the entire list. I got to believe it's going to be some other form of card advantage to kind of start snowballing the game as quick as possible from here.
Right. I mean, I'm not familiar with the play patterns of current Goblins because there's so many different unique creatures in there now. Goblins a deck that doesn't play as many 4-ofs probably as a lot of other decks.
Also, it's changed drastically over the last year, right?
Yes.
Modern Horizons, now Jumpstart, lots of new cool cards. And I got to say, I'm a big fan of, like tier 2 strategies or like, the non like best deck, right? Like Goblins has never been like the best deck in Legacy, but I'm a big fan of these decks getting some kind of boost somewhere, right? Like this might be one of the only good things to come out of Modern Horizons, right? Like since most of the good cards in it have been banned, a lot of the good, cool Goblin stuff has just been good enough to reinvigorate the archetype. So big fan of that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, like you're saying, a ringleader. Maybe we even get another Matron just to put more stuff on the board. We could get a Muxus, although that's going to be really slow.
6-drop, right? I
believe so, yeah. So that's going to, without drawing a Cavern, I think that's probably too long to wait for. 2 Tarmogoyfs on the board. Maybe we have to get Sling Gang Lieutenant to be able to block. Maybe we get...
well, let's see. If we draw something like Cavern of Souls here, I don't hate the idea of Matron for something. To start getting blockers into play to make the game go long.
Yeah.
Because as a Goblins player, you actually want the games to go long. It feels weird since you're technically playing an aggressive deck in a format, but in this matchup, you're the control player. Like you're taking the role of you're just trying to kind of constrict what the Delver player can do. You're trying to mitigate the damage that Force of Will and Daze are going to do against you, and how good Lightning Bolt's going to be against you, because eventuality is on your side, not the Delver players.
So we're sitting here with our fetch lands uncracked. This is we drew a Goblin Lackey, so we really can't afford to draw any more lands here. So maybe the thinning is actually worth the life points at this point. That's something for other people to decide. I feel like I probably would have fetched here unless these Tarmogoyfs are really like we're gonna survive another turn either way. I think I would like to see Lackey just gets cast. That's a blocker at this point. Yeah,
I'd also say I think the Matron's going to get used at instant speed here during the opponent's turn, maybe to get a chump block in, and you don't you have a Vial on 2 and a Vial on 3, and if you're not cracking your fetch lands, there's nothing you're going to get that you're going to want to use right now. Possibly, I was about to say the Munitions Expert. I could think of Munitions Expert. That card doesn't kill anything just yet, so you can't Matron into Munitions Expert to kill something. That's a play that works pretty well against something like Dreadhorde Arcanist, but it's harder to kill 4 or 5 Tarmogoyfs.
Yeah, definitely. There's no Death Touch Goblin, I don't think, that we can acquire.
Sure, there's one somewhere, in the history of Magic, but it's probably not good enough for the Legacy deck.
There's Death Touch Changeling in Modern Horizons. Maybe we could play a copy of that.
It counts.
But, I think we're going to be chump blocking. Maybe we'll chump block with Matron and not with the Goblin Lackey, just to make the opponent respect it a little bit. But certainly a change is going to be required here. Matron into perhaps another Matron or Ringleader into Muxus. Something is going to be required because we can't go 1-for-1 with these Tarmogoyfs. It's just not how the deck works.
And if you're done, if you're on the Delver side of things, I kind of like you're talking about, you might be a little worried about the Goblin Lackey, right? Because your opponent hasn't really done anything this game. So like what's in their hand? It's probably some big expensive thing, most likely, right? Yeah. Or, they have a Matron and you're trying to think of like, what's the range of your opponent's hand from here? And it's probably either they're dead or you're in a bad spot or about to be in a bad spot. They're going to do something really, really powerful. And so sitting from the Delver side, these are the games that I'm always a little uneasy because they feel too easy to me. You know what I mean? I'm like, what's going on? This feels like I'm just doing whatever I want. Something's going wrong here. Like I'm a little worried about what's about to happen. So I've been trying to think about what you get with the Goblin Matron here. We're going to see. I was going to say Ringleader definitely makes sense to me because you're going to need to block a lot over the next few turns. And you want to make sure that you accrue as much value as possible. So Ringleader definitely makes a ton of sense here.
And we see, okay, Bolt takes down Lackey. All right, so we're going to actually have to, we're not going to get to just cheat in a drop off of that, which makes that probably could have been held off for a moment, but either way. Now, again, like I know fetching to thin doesn't make a ton of sense a lot of times. There's lots of arguments against it, but when you're on Ringleader here, I really feel like we need to hit a couple goblins, and pulling a few land out of the deck, it would be something that's very tempting for me.
Yeah, I was trying to think if you thin here, do you just go with the full Monty and thin all 3 cards? Because I think you need to hit at least 2 to 3 goblins off your Ringleader here.
I agree.
If you get 1, I think you're dead.
Yes. I'm actually, I want to say, I mean, I know there are cards in the deck that we'll want to find eventually that give us value for blocking and sacrificing things, but I'm surprised the Matron didn't chump block. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess being at 12 versus 8 doesn't really matter at this point, so, okay, I totally understand. But there's certainly an instinct to throw that in the way there. Okay, so Ringleader comes down. We did fetch once. And we hit, is that...
Prospector and Munitions Expert were a little short on being able to do both this turn and kill a Termagoyf, so little rough for the Goblins player coming out of here. They do have a Wasteland to kind of take the Delver player off of green mana here, but there's already 2 Termagoyfs in play, so it's not exactly something that's going to be game-breaking from here.
Yeah, this is.
But it is something relevant.
I mean, we did. So, yeah, we said we can't afford to draw another land, and we need to hit like 3 on the. Neither one of those things happened.
If you only hit 1 or 2, you needed it to be like another Matron or another Ringleader. You know, one of the ones that brings friends to the party, right? Like all of your goblins do one of 2 things. They're either very powerful on their own and serve a purpose, or they bring friends to the party. Right. And like I said, that's the important thing in this matchup is you want to go wide with your goblins. You want to be doing stuff. When you're having to start chump blocking with them, that's when things are going wrong.
Yeah. So we are able to actually kill a Tarmogoyf here if we put something in front of one of the Tarmogoyfs, which we're going to do anyway, and then Munitions Expert for 4, and nothing dies in response and it resolves. Then we can kill 1 Tarmogoyf, and I don't even think
a lot of ifs.
Point. Yeah.
We're a lot of ifs. You need a lot to go right.
Yeah. It really is. So Expert will come down, and
it looks like a force of will. Yep.
Get forced, and so now we'll chump block and hope to find something off the top that generates a lot of
Ringleader, Matron, one of the goblins that comes along with friends. You know, something like Sling Gang. A lot of these cards can go a long way in this spot, but it needs to be this turn.
Yeah, we need more than 1 body off of this card.
Especially the Arcanist added now, too, because now there's another Lightning Bolt that's live.
Yeah, we need help here. That's not it.
It's about 3 too many lands this game. When you have the double Vial draw, and this is what we were talking about with the opening hand, right? Like, you can kind of go back into the mulligan decision, where I think this hand was probably a mulligan. The fact that you had double Aether Vial and then all these lands, right? Like, you don't want that much mana because Aether Vial is a mana source, right? Like it's going to put your creatures into play. It keeps them from being countered in the matchup. That's important. You know, Goblin Matron, that's important. But you saw what happened in the game where if you draw more lands, you're going to lose the game, right? From that spot. And I do think that like your deck is still really good on 6 cards, right? You know, you draw 7, mulligan 1. Like you're still looking at a lot of cards. You're still going to have really explosive draws. You're still likely to have one of the big plays on turn 1, something like an Aether Vial or whatever. But you know, I can see it either way. I don't want to harp too much on that decision, but I do think that was the most important decision in that game was keeping the opening hand.
Yeah, it definitely. Goblin's a deck that runs a lot of mana. There are 24 lands plus the vials in the deck. And because we do have utility lands, we have the Wastelands, we have Rashadan Ports, we have a Caracas, Caverns. Like there's a lot going on with the mana base, and the cards aren't cheap. But like you're saying, we had a bunch of lands and we had 2 vials. So we only need 1 set of those things. We can keep 2 land, 2 vials. Or we can keep 4 land. But we can't really do both. There's just not enough space in the hand for stuff. And
you also have too many whiffs as well after that, right? Like, is even drawing Goblin Lackey at that point good? Probably not. You know, Skirk Prospector, like, probably not. There's 6 to 7 to 8 draws in your deck besides lands that are also whiffs. You know, the other Aether Vials are also whiffs. So you're looking at about 10 cards that you draw over the span of the next 2 turns that you probably lose the game if those are the cards you draw plus the lands. You know, so you're looking at, a quarter to a third of your deck, if not more, of cards that are just actual whiffs and lose the game. So, yep.
So John Ryan Hamilton loses that game. Well, he did take down the first one, and so he'll be on the play here for game 3, looking to finish things up. And we have 3 land. We have a Chalice, a Lat. I think this hand is excellent.
Yeah. I mean, Cavern of Souls into Lackey. Do you have a Bolt? If you don't, well, I'm going to put a 6-drop into play.
Yeah.
And
boy.
Can we pull up a card right now? Can we pull up Muxus so people at home and I can remember exactly what this card does? Because it is wordy. There is a lot going on in this card. One of the sleepers of the set. 6-drop 4/4. When it comes to play, enters the battlefield. Reveal the top 6 cards of your library. You put all goblin creature cards converted mana cost 5 or less. So the rest of the goblins in the deck that aren't this, put them onto the battlefield and put the rest on the bottom. And then when it attacks, it gets +1/+1 for all your other goblins. We might obviously this is representing Bolt, but I want to see the turn 2 Muxus really bad.
So do I. And I would like to see here. We don't need to play Chalice first. Just attack.
Yeah.
When that
they have Bolt. Like,
yeah.
In fact, you're probably better off playing Goblin Crater Maker if they have a Bolt here. Maybe. I think Chalice for 1 might still be really good, but
yeah, I think Chalice for 1 sounds good. So we have baby. So here we go. First time I've seen this card actually dumped into play.
The first time anyone's seen this card dumped into play.
I know, seriously. So Rough Tumble's not going to do it because Muxus is big.
Oh, and a Matron?
Okay, so yeah, the little blur on the screen there, but yeah, it's a Matron and a War Marshal.
This is powerful. Holy.
Yeah, it is. And we have a Cavern in play. Rug Delver, I mean...
You're not coming back from this.
I'm trying to... Okay, so what do we need to happen from Rug Delver's side?
The MTGO client needs to crash, and you have to regame this game.
Hey, let's not... I mean, it sounds like we already had that happen in our other feature match, so let's not get too far ahead of ourselves for that one. But yeah, so from Rug Delver's side, the Rough Tumble is going to be important, because that would only leave a 4/4 and a 1/1 on the board, so we'd still be in trouble.
You're still taking a ton of damage. The fact that the card is a 4/4 is a big deal here, too, because you can't do something like Bolt into Rough Tumble here. By the way, chat is also loving this, so
I'm surprised.
This is some good. This is what you came here to see today. We're getting some good stuff on camera today. I like this.
Yeah, and so we have Chalice on 1 coming down, and it's in.
This game's over. Yeah.
Tannon, you're experienced broadcaster in Magic and in other games. You want to create suspense. You have to keep viewers involved.
I was just about to say, I think the amount of suspense here is going to be when exactly the Rug Delver player decides that the game is actually over. When they decide to concede. And I feel for them. That draw, here's the thing. We didn't get to see the Rug Delver player's hand, right? And their hand could have been good. It could have been they could have had a Braid in it. They could have had Termagoyfs, ways to kind of get on the board, do some big stuff. They didn't have a Lightning Bolt. And that is what it came down to. Goblin Lackey put in one of the creatures. Here's the thing. If it puts in Pile Driver, Chain Whirler, one of these other cards that you're cheating on mana and you get some good stuff, the Delver player can play a few more turns. That was the dream scenario, right? It's putting in this new flashy rare from this new set that, I would have to read that card in person right now. I've seen it multiple times and I would still have to read it. Like, what did it do? I know I'm probably dead, but what exactly does it do? Kind of thing. So that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Muxus, the grand something or other.
Yeah.
Goblin King Champion, bringer of armies.
Yeah.
So yeah, the other scary things are you want to see Ringleader. That's another big one that could drop on a Lackey on turn 1. But yeah, that's the new hotness, I'm sure. And we have the guest, Nerdrage's guest during the top 8 coverage tonight is going to be Mike Hadley, who's an experienced Goblin player. And I messaged him when these new cards got spoiled. And I said, are you excited about this? He's like, yeah, I've already been, practicing. And I was like, I just read the card. What do you mean you're already been practicing? Is he, yeah, there's a possible turn 2 kill. And I was like, what? So I don't know how that's going to work. We'll have that explain that in a few hours when he's on for this evening. I'm trying
to figure it out. Does it have to do with Sharpshooter and Muxus? I'm assuming it's Muxus. It's something.
Conspicuous Snoop. I don't even know.
It's got to be conspicuous Snoop and something as well, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. But let's go ahead and so do we have a second match coming for this round? Okay.
Okay.
So we
good news, bad news.
Yeah, so we do not have a second match for you this round, but we are going to have the Ninjas deck on for round 3 because it did win this round. So we will get to see the match that we hyped up a little bit this round. We'll get to see at least one of those players play out next round. Honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing either one of those decks.
Mm-hmm. I'm super excited to watch the Ninjas deck. I think round 3 is my last round of coverage today, so I'm really excited to get the deck that we spent a few minutes talking about, but then there was a technical issue on the player side, so we couldn't get it done. But the Ninjas player was victorious, and I know we're supposed to remain impartial. Both decks were really cool. I was excited to see both.
We've had some cool decks, like for your. I mean, we had your deck, Rug Delver, kind of get trounced.
Oh yeah,
but we've had 12 posts. We're gonna have Ninjas. We had Goblins. Like this is a collection of cool Legacy decks. And then really, the one thing that certainly has always stood out for Legacy, whether it's been signed at kind of an imagined thing or not, is that the metagame is very wide. But if you look right now, if you look at the Magic Online decklist page, the most recent Legacy update is very large. The most recent Standard update, not so much.
Yeah, so it's just growth spiral.dex. Yeah, and then and it's like you said, I actually think Legacy is in a really good spot right now. Super diverse, lots of cool decks that you could be playing. Yeah, Rug Delver is the most popular deck. Yeah, it's really, really good. But that doesn't mean you have to play it, right? And it does have bad matchups. There are decks that are good against it. Chalice of the Void is still an unbeatable card if that card resolves. It's a nightmare to play against prison decks. It always has been. It always will be. Right? You have to counterspell everything they do while also applying pressure. Goblins, not a great matchup. It doesn't feel good. I haven't personally played against Ninjas. I definitely can see some draws out of this deck that would be very problematic for me to beat. I gotta say, look, Fatal Push. That card kills every creature in your deck except for Hooting Mandrills. And then eventually they can make that card irrelevant. I'm gonna say this: if I'm playing in a Legacy tournament, my opponent does something weird on turn 1 or 2, and I'm not sure what's going on. If they play like Ornithopter or something, I'm generally scared.
Right.
I'm like that thing. They're not playing something fair. And they're not gonna follow it up with Phyrexian Walker and just be like a 0 whatever deck. Like I need some blockers or something.
And that's kind of something that's different now because we do have deck lists open. So that aspect of the uncertainty, the fear isn't quite there the way it used to be. Now there's certainly plenty of fear if you're seeing down across from a Muxus and you're like, well, I don't know how this plays out, but at least you know what you're up against. The match against Jonathan Job that you referenced, again, I'll come back to that one from a couple of years ago where I was playing Cephalid Reanimator and he's playing Ninjas, and both of us are reading cards from each other's deck as the match goes along. That's exciting for coverage, probably. Yeah. But do you think that's better for the game where there's actually not just you may not know how the matchup plays out, but you don't even know what the matchup is. Do you think things are as with some of these online events and some of what we're going to with like the Pro Tour events now with the reveal deck list? Do you think this is good? Do you think it's a good thing?
I think it is. Honestly, I'm completely fine. Let's answer the short question quickly. I'm completely fine with the deck list thing. Like it's just the nature of the beast. You kind of have to do it to deter cheating. Right. Stuff online, anybody getting an unfair advantage. I think that's fine. It does take away a little bit of like, hey, my deck's secret. I got this cool card main that should be a sideboard card. Like, I might get some advantage there. People know about it now, but like whatever, right? In some ways, it's actually better to have them know the card is there because now they'll play around it. So it gets the effect of it the entire game, whether you have it or not. As for the cool, interesting, different things happening on camera, I think the answer is just yes, that it has to be good for coverage. Now, while it makes our jobs harder, because here's the thing. If I had to commentate on a Delver matchup every round, I'd be crisp. I would be easy for me. I would know what's going on at pretty much 99% of the time, right? Like I would be able to go through the play lines and know what's going on. It would be kind of robotic for me. It'd be like pretty easy to go through it. I've flexed that muscle a million times in my life. When it's decks that I haven't seen or that I haven't played with a lot, I think it's good because it intrigues us. It brings the audience in a little bit more. Hey, there's something cool. There's something new. And then not only that, it's entertaining, right? Like we're learning as they are. We're seeing cool stuff. Like I'll start reading chat because they're probably going to know something I don't because they've probably played the deck and I haven't, And I'm interested to see what's going to happen with it as well. I still remember getting into Legacy the first couple times I played, right? And I was in anyone who's played Legacy events can tell you this. The overall demeanor of the players in the Legacy community when you're playing is probably the best you're ever going to play in. Everyone's like happy to be playing their decks, right? They're happy to be playing in the event. And even the games that I was losing, I was super excited to see how I was going to die. Where I was like, what cool thing are you going to do? You know, are you gonna put a 6-drop into play on turn 2? You're going to cast a 15-drop on turn 5? Am I getting comboed with this card Doomsday that I read it and I still can't tell you what the card does? You know, I need to call a judge over. Like, there's like 7 Oracle texts to this card. How does it work? You know, kind of thing. And I think it is good for coverage, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with being excited about watching Standard right now, but it's old, it's stale. Like, you're going to see the same things over and over again, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because it really, the best players and the most prepared players are probably going to win. It's closer to chess than Magic versus like what's going on now. You know, the best player, the most prepared, is going to win. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, you get rewarded for putting in time and effort. It's also cool to see new and entertaining and crazy things happen as well, because this game, especially when you're playing with Legacy and you're playing with what, I think 16,000 unique cards, you know, some number that's astronomical. Yeah. And you see interactions that you've never seen before, you know, and it's not some format that's boiled down to like 2 or 3 decks. And I think this is really cool. And I love the coverage so far today, and I've been super excited by at least, you know, one, if not both decks in every matchup so far.
Yeah, no, we've had some good stuff. And certainly we have some good stuff to look forward to today. We had a good turnout for the event, and certainly we're happy with it. We were over the Nerd Rage owner Norman Cohen threw out a player numbers. Like, if we get this many, I'll be happy. And we beat that. So
why don't you tell people at home how you get to play in this event?
Okay, sure. Good idea. So, yeah, if you're interested in playing one of our events in the future, the way these work on when they're played on Magic Online or an Arena is you can see the announcements pop up, and we give you a couple weeks notice in advance, and then the way that the events are charged is you need to subscribe to Nerd Rage's Patreon, which was created for this purpose, because of some restrictions and rules that I'm not going to go into. This is the way that we're forced to do it. You register for the Patreon, then you're able to enter the event for free, although you've already paid for the Patreon. And then at the end of the month, you'll get an email reminding you to cancel the Patreon subscription if you don't want to continue with it, because we are treating it like a tournament entry fee. It's not something where we're expecting accrue value for you every month. And then we're using the MTG Melee software, which now that's a word that I am continuously told I pronounce wrong. Whatever.
Everyone says melee.
Yeah, okay, melee. Yeah, so I pronounce that wrong every single time, and yet somehow I'm continually unable to hear the difference and get it right. We use that new software that came out a couple months ago. Works pretty well. The Pro Tour Finals is using it next weekend. So lots of levels of events are moving to that. Star City Opens are using that also. It works very cleanly. If you haven't used it before, there's not, don't feel anxious about having to learn how to use the interface. It's very intuitive. It actually has verbal announcements that tell you what to do.
If Joe and I can get away with using it, if we can do it, you'll be okay. We're very old.
That is a very accurate statement. I am getting older. My birthday was yesterday, and I turned 51, which is insane. But I've always felt like I've always feel like the age of the people I'm around. And even though I'm trending older than the Magic crowd in general, I don't feel old. I just feel like I'm here. I'm along with everyone else. So we're going to take a brief break before we move into round 3. So thank you for joining us, and we'll be right back. Stick around.